Hey friends out there, Rob here. Today I want to talk to you about live streaming best practices. Very specific to YoloBox, but it's going to work with any type of mobile or on-location platform. This is a great topic. I see it in the forums all the time. Sometimes it really irritates me. And maybe it's because it's a topic of knowledge and experience. So many of us think live streaming has everything that's the same with just grabbing your cell phone and pressing go live. And you say to yourself, well, how come I can live stream for hours on Facebook? Well, yeah, there are many differences between using your cell phone and a native app to stream live than using something like YoloBox to attempt to stream live as a mobile platform on location somewhere. The number one thing you must remember whenever you're live streaming is that YoloBox is the hub. In fact, whatever you're streaming through, whatever you're using, first-party app, cell phone, whatever, that's the hub. So if your computer is what's live streaming through a software like OBS or XSplit, the computer is the hub. If it's YoloBox, whether it's the InStream or the Pro or the Ultra or the Extreme, or whether it's Talent, those things are the hubs. Where people begin to have a problem is they say that I'm experiencing drops or problems or freezes with whatever device that they're using. And usually they think that it's that device's fault. And to be sure, different devices have problems, but most of the time it's a user error or a network error or something that could have been prevented with prior planning. Most of you that are out there learning this for the first time might skip over this video because it's too boring. Right? Well, if you're charging for your services and that's the type of cavalier attitude you have, you deserve the result you get. I have very little patience or cry time for those guys. I could care less. But for those of you that do want to learn, this is the process that I use, and I hope that it works for you. I've got YoloBox set up here with an HDMI out. Let's talk about HDMI outs for a second. HDMI is a digital signal. It's not an analog signal. So truly, there should be no degradation when running in HDMI cables of basically any length. In theory, a digital signal should be fine over 500 meters, 1,000 meters, a kilometer, 20 miles. In practice, that's not true. It's also not true when you begin to loop the digital signal from your HDMI out and then convert it to things like SDI. When you go through the conversion process, unless you have a dedicated like DI box, conversion box, ADC box, ADV box, something like that, then you may very easily have signal loss and degradation between the two. You may lose audio and video sync. If you don't know that going into this, and you think that you can buy any HDMI cable and you'll be okay, you are wrong. Simple as that. HDMI cables have different categories and classes of the type of signal that they can send. They also have different transmission rates, data transmission rates. So you need an HDMI cable that is up to the task for the signal that you're sending. These cables often cost more, and most people that are just getting into it, you, the viewer, you most likely purchased your cable on Amazon and got the cheaper cables because you didn't know there was a difference. Or maybe you did yourself the favor unknowingly because you don't like to buy the cheapest, but you never buy the most expensive, so you buy the mid-price. And why not buy the mid-price? Because it's all just a bunch of Chinese brands, and they're all the same anyways, with different gray labels slapped onto the cable. This is a recipe for disaster. You should buy a good quality cable, one that works. It doesn't have to be a Mogami cable or anything like that, but it has to be a quality cable. You really want a minimum of HDMI 1.4 or higher. Minimum 1.4 or higher. If you're getting the 1.2 or the 1.1, you want 1.4 or higher at a minimum. That's going to cost you some money. What does this have to do with? Why is that important? Well, YoloBox, just like other live streaming devices, often have video outputs. So if you're streaming your video output somewhere to a data collection like the Atomos Ninja V with the docking, so it can record a whole bunch of stuff, or if you're trying to record internally for a backup, you might be streaming your output somewhere. Well, if you're streaming that output and then connecting it to a camera to stream back in, like using two different ways to get an audio or video signal input. For example, if you're streaming the program output, something like you might see in one of these. Give me 1 second. Come over here, go to program. I'm got to set up my HDMI out. And we want it to be the mirror out on both situations. Now I've set it up to stream. So if you're sending this out to a camera or a recording device that also has an HDMI out to bring it back in so that you can show this screen like I'm showing here as a selectable signal, well, you're going to encounter delay cascades, period, an audio delay, and you may have degradation and you may not have a sync because YoloBox is already overlaying all this information from all the cameras the first time. It's then being sent out to a camera which is processing or something a second time and then sending back into YoloBox to resync. There's going to be a synchronization issue there, which is why when you hold a camera up in front of a TV, you see like 50 different screens. You know, you see that cascade. If you don't understand that, you might scratch your head and say, oh my goodness, what? It just is the way that it is. There are ways that you can do it, and it's usually when you use YoloBox as a hub that streams to another YoloBox where you can output this specific display, or it streams to another hub such as OBS. This would be your main hub and then for all your camera angles, and then the other one would be for your actual live stream. It's not that you can't do it both ways, it's that it's not as easy as you might think. Currently, we're just set up at a standard model that I might use in the monitor mode for recording locally. When I record locally, I'm actually recording direct to YoloBox in the quality that I want to deliver to my clients. What quality is that? Well, most of the time, it's going to be something that's probably 3 to 7 megabits per second, maybe 15 to 20 in 4K or 6 to 10 in 1080p, something like that. And where do we set those different streamings? Well, we go to our encoding management for recording internally right here, and then we can set the type of encoding or recording stream that we want. In this case, I've got 1080p, 30 frames per second, 6 megabits set at H.264 constant bit rate. And I've chosen to record the program. Now, I can also choose whatever other inputs that are live or active, and YoloBox will attempt to record all of those without any dropped frames. I use YoloBox Ultra, but I have the Ultra, the Extreme, and the Pro, and the Original, and InStream, and Mini. The reality is, there are some different audio frame rate issues with YoloBox from time to time. I think this has to do with the processing power and the internal recording when YoloBox is recording. For me, I get around these issues for understanding how to set up YoloBox. For example, YoloBox can take a 4K signal and process it to a 1080p signal for broadcast. YoloBox Ultra and YoloBox Pro definitely. YoloBox Ultra or Extreme can do 4K or higher. Okay. So if I'm using YoloBox Pro, which can only stream at 1080p, but the outputs from my cameras that I'm sending to it are in 4K, YoloBox has to downsample the 4K signal and then process that signal and encode it with the audio to stream. Well, it has to do the same thing to downsample and encode it in order to save. So what I found is that if I want to stream or record in a particular frame rate, I must set the cameras up to that frame rate in the first place. I'm in the United States. 1080p, 30 and 60 are the standard for YouTube. Over in the UK and PAL countries, it's 25 and 50. Okay, figure out where you are and set your camera up to output the 25, 50, 30, or 60 to match what YoloBox is attempting to process. You will then relieve a lot of stress from the encoder and allow it to do a better job processing your audio. If you don't have a camera or camcorder that allows you to send out a different signal than the signal that you are recording, meaning record internally at 4K but send an HDMI out or an SDI out at 1080p, then you have to deal with the fact that you are likely using A 10-year-old device or a very consumer, not professional grade, not even prosumer device, which means the gear that you're using sucks for what you're doing. I'm going to say it straight again. This is a place where buying good gear can help. I don't care if it's first-hand or second-hand, but if you're trying to stream and you're trying to stream in a resolution different than your capture resolution, then you must get a device that will allow you to do that. Meaning, I record everything in UHD 4K 60. Sometimes I'll use 4K 30 or 24. It depends on what show or what thing I'm doing. But I'm always making sure that I have the ability to capture the highest resolution and frame rate at the highest bit rate internally. I want to have multi-purpose media that I collect from each device that is of the highest quality I need so that I can archive it in case I need to do something with it later. Isn't it nice to have full resolution video that you can turn into something else for your client months after they've hired you the first time when they say they would like an edit of the original media? And at this point in time, you now have the full media, the full quality media to go back and do that edit. You see, if you're not thinking like that, begin thinking like that. You must get good. If you're not thinking like that, you are not thinking like a business person or someone that cares about their client or someone that cares about their reputation. Doing this job, streaming anything, is hard, which means you have to sturdy up yourself, shore yourself up with as many defenses from the inevitable failure that you will encounter. Failure is okay when you have made preparations and provisions for it. If your camera can only send out 1080p and you can only collect 1080p or 4K, then when you're using YoloBox, if your intent is to deliver an internal file as the final file with all the cuts using the internal camera switching and encoding, then to make it easier for YoloBox and to get rid of the audio gap slip, a big thing that you can do is make sure that your audio and your video are coming from the same input, but more importantly, make sure that your video input to YoloBox matches the recording output. If you want to make sure that your audio is also synchronized very well, I do my best not to use the internal mic or line input for audio on YoloBox. Not because it's not good, but for the same principle I just shared with you. I want to have already synced media. Generally speaking, I will run a Tascam Porta Capture X8 or whatever into a device like my camcorder, whatever my main recording device is for what I'm doing. And it's not always a camcorder. Most of the time it is because of the type of things I do. But it's not always. Sometimes it's a Panasonic S5 or a Sony A7S III or something like that. In those instances, I will run audio into that camera from a Tascam field device, so I have multiple inputs, and then tell YoloBox to use that camera's input, the HDMI input, as the main audio and not switch audio from camera to camera. When you switch audio from camera to camera, which is audio follows video, or even video follows audio, you have to make sure that all of those different audio pieces, all those different audio chains, all those different microphones are properly set to unity and sound good and are at the same levels. Well, it's just a lot more to do. If you sync your audio to one master device, which in my case is the Tascam Porta Capture, and then send that to your main video, you've already synced your great audio that you can control from one off YoloBox device, synchronized it with the camera's clock, the Panasonic or whatever your main camera's clock is, so that those two audio and video pieces are already synced. So that when they come into YoloBox, that audio and video is already paired up. It's much easier for audio to be synced between cameras then because the audio that you're bringing in is already attached to video. And generally speaking, you won't even have to worry about delay because your camera's clock or your camcorder's clock will do the initial sync, and it's really good, especially if you've got good gear. If you don't have such great gear, maybe not. But that's just the first part. Let's come back out here. So instead of talking about a recording, let's go to something that looks like a live stream. Here, I've got a couple of events. We'll just go into the test event right here. In the test event, I have everything set up the way that I want. But notice a big change. I'm now at 1080p, 30 frames per second, 2.2 megabits. Notice that when I was recording my local event, I actually had my bit rate bumped up some, and I could go even higher on the times that I want. The reason that I do that is because I want a deliverable item, a scratch item that I can give to the client right away. And since I'm already always recording on all of my devices, the only device that I'm recording internally to that has all of my switching and the audio that was edited at the time the show was recorded is the audio and the video, the files that I get from YoloBox. All of my other high quality files I would have to sync in a timeline in post-production like in DaVinci Resolve and then re-edit everything. Well, you see, that's a separate cost for my clients, right? You see, when I'm paid and hired to record a podcast, for example, where we're going to have multiple panel interviews or something like that, or when I'm hired to do something for an award ceremony or a briefing or an instruction, teacher, a seminar, the deliverable item that they get is directly off of YoloBox, okay? Regardless of if we're live streaming or not, it's directly off of YoloBox. They will get the event delivered in the order that it happened, which is this event, okay? I get those files from YoloBox from the internal recording. If they want something of a higher quality, maybe they want something around 20 or 40 megabits per second, depending on the client's request, that's where I go to the original video and do a secondary edit. Those are chargeable revenue streams. I charge them for that. So I have to record on each side. But the reason that when I'm live streaming that the bit rate is lower is because network capacity can't often handle the type of stream that I might need to send, the data rate. If you don't know that, that's okay. You're learning it now. Why is that, you say? You grab your cell phone. I can Facebook Live. I can Twitch Live. You with the OnlyFans. You can do that all you want. And it's great. OnlyFans, Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, they have all developed first-party apps made specifically for content creation and revenue and ads generation on there. Their pipeline is directly created to make sure that your phone, first-party phone app, is directly integrated into their live stream platform. Those companies are making money off of you. So they want to make it easy for them to make money off of you. So they make it easier for their video streaming services to work with your cell phone, your Android, your iPhone, whatever you're using. Generally it's iPhone and then Android. YoloBox is a third-party app that has to connect to these things. YoloBox doesn't always have direct access to first-party APIs and protocols, programming protocols. Many times, third-party devices have to connect through a stream key directly. And to be fair, YoloBox, other than having one button login most of the time, which works great, also has RTMPS and RRT and all these other streaming protocols, which makes it easier. In fact, when you set up your stream with a stream key, you actually get better access, from my experience, because you are actually going through the stream key using the RTMPS server, like when we come down here and we go to Add New Platform, and you see RTMPS, SRT, HLS. If I click this, right, and it's going to ask me to fill that stuff in, these services generally work better because those services themselves are direct platform integrations, rather than what happens when you create an event. When you create an event for one of these platforms, you're going through a third party. Does this look like Facebook to you? Does this look like YouTube to you? No. You're going through an application, like communication protocol that YoloLive, or whatever service you're using, had to create, had to work kind of in partnership, sidestep, but Facebook doesn't like to do this. They change their access protocols every 90 days almost. YouTube is much better. They make this integration easier. So if you're trying to create a new one from here, you have a lot of capability. You can name the title, the destination, the schedule. You can even add a picture for the cover art for the display. This is all third-party integration, right? Which means that when Facebook changes their protocols, this system ends. And it's highly customizable. It's great. But when it ends, do you want to know what works wonderfully? This one right here, where we just choose one of these. Look, I've got a custom RTMPS. If I choose to link this one, it simply says Robert Ham Photography video live stream starting soon. Because your custom RTMP link is good for a specific link. So every time you live stream using that link, it will always have the same title. Which means you would need to change the title and the cover art from the platform, in this case, YouTube or Facebook, after the event is over. So you could either create multiple additional stream keys, SRT, RTMPS, HLS, whatever, and use them as generic keys for your weekly shows or your weekly or monthly clients. Or you could use the first or third-party integration, which is the one-button login when you create a new show here. This is what most people do because this is all that they're capable of in their mind. They don't realize the other ways. This is actually a crutch, if you ask me. You see, because this way is the sweet, pretty simple way that can fail you on location. Like I said, Facebook is the #1 offender. Facebook constantly changes their APKs about every 90 days, which means that about every 90 days to 4 months, YoloBox has to figure out how to access it again directly through one-click login, which is what this is. However, if you set up your own stream key like I've got right here, you don't have to worry about that. It will always work. And if you know how to do it once, that's it. That's because you set up the stream key manually. Also, for those of you that think this is a hot take, well, you're kind of childish in that because the reality is this is exactly the way a professional live stream producer would want to be trained and should know how to do in order to make sure you can set up your live stream. When your one click fails and you can't get in for some reason, what are you going to do? Tell your client, I'm so sorry? Of course not. Of course not. You're just going to go over to your custom RTMP and set up one for that stream and keep going. If you don't know that you can do that or you don't know how to do that, you better start knowing. It's as simple as that, especially if you're charging money. When you look at these things as a whole, that still doesn't get us to where we are up here, 1080p 30, 2.2 megabits at H.264. This comes from a network test. Where do we get a network test? Well, prior to even beginning any stream, you should come over, bring up your device, go to Connections, and go to Network Speed Test. This is a minimum. You should set your network speed test for a minimum of 5 minutes if you're live streaming. Why 5 minutes? Why? Because how long do you expect your live stream to last? The shorter your network test, generally the higher your bandwidth will look. So when you're making decisions about how to connect your network's stream rate and encoding, its bit rate, if you make them based on a false pretense, you're going to have problems. The longer you stream, the more likely you are going to drop frames and have stutters. So the longer your test, the better it is. You're not looking for this number. You probably didn't know that either. I'm going to show you. This is the number that you're looking for. My test is still going. Let me see if I pause it and it will become available. Nope, it's still going. I'll continue. The number you're really looking for is your upload speed. And because this is a 5-minute test, it won't become black and easy for you to see until just a few minutes. But just a minute ago, I was uploading at 29 megabits per second. Okay, that's a wireless network in my house at 5G or whatever, which is great. The next thing I want to tell you is that when you're streaming, you're often streaming wirelessly out and about at some area. As such, your network will likely change over and over and over again. The more people that are in your area, let's say you're doing a wedding, the more cell phones that are in the area, usually 150, 200 people watching a wedding, the less bandwidth the cell network is going to give your connection. Which is why I'm going to be over here at 1080p, 2.2, 2.1, anything below 2 megabits per second, I switch to 720p. Why is that? Well, because if the network's not giving me enough bandwidth, then I'm going to have dropped frames. So what do you do when you start noticing you have dropped frames? You simply pause the live stream, change the encoding rate from 1080 to 720, change your bit rate down to about 1.2, and then restart your live stream. Did you know that you could pause your live stream and then restart it with YoloBox? Well, if you didn't, then there's a pro tip that just saved you a client suing you or demanding their money back. Pause your live stream, change the internal recording settings, the encoding settings, and then continue. Let's talk about these for just a moment, okay? 720p is the frame size. 1080 is what I prefer. 720 is what often happens. 30 frames per second. In this instance, it matches what YouTube is expecting. 30 frames per second is YouTube's standard, which means if you send it 24, it will interpolate additional frames, 6 of them. So don't do that. Send it the 30 that it wants, no interpolation. Which means set your camera to 30 frames per second. In this instance, I'm now at 720. A moment ago, I was at 1080. If I was internally recording to all my cameras, I would not be able to stop them, change the camera output to 720, and then start recording again. That would mess up the whole problem. So this is the fail-safe pro tip for when your standard stream encoding isn't working. And this is the only time that I would send the device, YoloBox, a signal other than the one I'm streaming. And as you saw, it was because I was experiencing dropped frames in the middle of the program. You might say to yourself, if it's a wedding, won't people be upset? Yes, but they'll surely be more upset if they can't see anything, right? So take a moment, pause the stream, change the settings, restart the stream. Don't forget, you were recording internally to your cameras, which means if you're smart, you'll just go to your house and the first thing you do when you get to the studio is download the wedding video footage, put together a quick wedding video edit by syncing it in Premiere Pro and telling it to switch by angles, and then upload that and replace your video feed. They won't even know. And then you go about your day. But if you didn't think to push the little button that says record, which costs you exactly 300, look at that, 0, no extra money, then you've just shot yourself in the foot because again, you're not thinking, right? This is all thinking stuff. If you're not noticing a theme here, I'm sharing with you a process that has built-in redundancies to overcome the vulnerability and the difficulty of live streaming. Live streaming is not easy. It gets easy when you have a wired connection. Oh boy, howdy. If you have a connection that you can plug into YoloBox in the Ethernet port, you're done. You're done, son. Everything's fine. But very seldom are you on location with an Ethernet connection that you can plug into. So, because of that, YoloBox has some additional options. They do happen to have bonding. And I don't know where bonding is up here because I don't use bonding very often. I might have had bonding turned off. I do use bonding from time to time. Bonding, network bonding, allows you to pay a fee for a monthly service and an amount of data, where YoloBox will combine multiple internet sources. So it will combine your wireless source, meaning the Wi-Fi. It will combine the SD, SIM card. It will combine the Ethernet and it will combine a USB dongle. It will combine 4 sources of internet into one stream. It will make the pipeline and the tunnel to connect and send through all of them, thereby fortifying your connection so you can stream with more reliability. This is great, but I think it's expensive, which is why I don't buy it unless I need it. When I need it, I build it into my billing. It's an extra $50 for the month. That's what's included. So for me, here's a pro tip. There's a contract. Someone wants to hire me for an event. Let's call it a wedding out in a barn in the mountains. Okay, so the first thing I do on the back end, I've heard all that stuff and I said, I'm going to be in the mountains. I might do a cellular network search to find out what the cellular coverage is out there. Do you do that? Probably not. If you did, you would know that you're probably going to have bad coverage, which means I'm going to need some network bonding. Oh, I see AT&T's got a, okay, T-Mobile's pretty good and Verizon's okay. Oh, what? US Cellular, wow, they're really out there strong. Okay, so there's 3 different networks out there, but I'm using T-Mobile. Maybe I need to get a 1-month activation on US Cellular too. Okay, cool. So then I go and I got an Android phone and I go buy a US Cellular SIM card with data from US Cellular. So now I got 2 cell phones, right? The SIM card can plug directly into YoloBox and work. Generally, check the LTE bands, but you can plug that in. At this point in time now, when I'm going out there, I know I've got my phone as well as the SIM card and they're both activated. And then I have bonding activated on here, which allows me to connect both of those signals. So now I've got a stronger signal. You see, all of this is just the beginning planning. Again, I'm simply sharing pro tips for encountering the inevitable, the fact that live streaming is hard. But then I also know they're going to want multiple cameras. And when's the last time you had power in the barn? What happens if the generator goes out? That's why I have camcorders mainly, because this one, the battery lasts for 4 hours when I press record, and it'll just sit on all day long. This one down here, 6 hours. This is tail 2, 5 hours. 5 hours of internal recording, 4K 60 from this pan-tilt zoom camera, which means that when I show up, I don't need any additional battery power, battery support. YoloBox Extreme, 6 hours, 7 hours. Goodness, I've never really ran this battery down. We're still going now, and I'm at 84% up there. And if you look at the beginning, it didn't drop, what, 3%, 5%? Probably not even 2%. I have no idea. I don't even worry about the battery on this thing. I've had this thing on and streaming for 4 hours in a row before and not even busted 50%. It's ridiculous. The next thing with this pro tip section is I have it in my contract what type of stream they're going to get. How do you litigate a contract that goes south? Like what constitutes a live stream? 4K 60 at 100 bits per second, megabits per second? Because if that's what the client's expecting and you don't have that in your contract, then they're going to win in court. No, instead you say things like, our general concern is to live stream in that area at 720p at 1.2 megabits per second. And there's a variability of 500 kilobits in between there. Boom. And now you have some variability. So when you deliver it, they'll understand what they were purchasing. What if they want 1080p? Great, then they can pay for it because it will be harder to deliver that stream in a data-starved network, and they have to understand that. What about if you do your entire process to the best of your ability and you still have dropped frames? How many dropped frames should a client be able to say, whoa, this is too many? Is 1 drop frame too many? What about 10? You need to think in percentages of your entire program. There are always going to be drop frames, even when YoloBox says they're not. There are, because YoloBox will often start from your encode time and count again. So generally speaking, I put 3% down as a drop frame maximum. And after that, I look at my other resolutions, which I bring up ahead of time with my customer, which is to say, hey, I want to give you the best quality product. And we realize the live stream is just a window into the event as it happens. I expect to do a fantastic job for you at the resolution we've talked about. But I recognize there could be some complications because it's live streaming and it's difficult and it depends on cellular networks. Have you ever tried to make a phone call and not been able to get through? Well, that's the network that we're using too. So it's 98% reliable. That's what Verizon says, right? So that's the only thing I can guarantee is whatever the network can do. So if for some reason we have more than this percentage of your show is dropped frames, then I will provide for you a remixed, edited, post-produced video for you. No charge. Later on, if the video is excellent, it will look great. There's no problem. If you want to buy that as a service later, great. 2 years down the road, I maintain your media for a total of 2 years. But if it happens on my end because of the network, I'll provide that to you for free. Okay, that's how you talk about it. And you have language like that in your contract. I have a feeling that most people that complain about live streaming don't understand business ownership, running a business, don't understand live streaming. There's a lot of things. And that's not a dig, it's just simply the truth. Okay? So how do you get good? Implement every one of the practices that I talked about today into your video production pipeline. Number one, a proper contract with expectations, deliverables, and remedies. Number two, the right to refuse, which means that if for some reason the contract changes halfway through, then you can walk away and also keep some kind of a retainer for your expertise that you expended trying to do it. Number three, always be recording. Always be recording in every device. If you can push a record button, do it. Make sure you've got good, fast media. It's a free backup of insurance and generally leads to secondary sales. Number four, understand your gear. Guys, you have got to get good. You cannot continue to cry and whine online about why it's not working. Number four, recognize the general limitations. Yes, live streaming is tough. Internal recording on YoloBox from time to time still leads to dropped frames of audio as it's changing to new audio, new video files. So instead of recording at 10-minute increments, record in 30-minute increments, right? That's the only other option, right? Or longer, whichever you prefer. I wouldn't suggest anything shorter than 30 minutes. I used to suggest 10, now it's 30, and it's for the reason that we talk about there. Although I don't experience dropped audio frames on YoloBox Extreme, on Pro and Ultra, definitely on Pro, when I'm not synchronizing my video output to YoloBox input, it's more likely to happen. So just get rid of the additional video files. That's the first workaround. And number four, we talked about ABR, always be recording, but also always be recording on your Tascam, on your audio input device. If you've got the original audio recorded on all of your devices and your master device in the best quality, you'll never have to worry about that because you can always sync it to your video later. Also, don't forget to make sure your sample rates are the same between your cameras because that can cause a sync drift issue when you synchronize in post-production and like Premiere or Resolve. These are my best practice tips that I hope have helped you. That's been the whole point of this video. And if you feel a little bit burned because it sounded a little stingy, somebody said sassy on another video, good, because that lets you know your blind spot. And now that you know your blind spot, you'll know what you need to think about in order to fix it. And I want you to be successful because more people doing what I do means there's more people out there needing the services that I do, right? And there's more work out there than I can shake a stick at. So there's plenty of work, but you got to earn it. And the concept, the idea that it's just good enough, I wanted to say F you. If that's your idea, it's terrible. It's never just good enough. Never just good enough. It has to be the best you can do, and you have to constantly try to improve. It's a concept called Kaizen, right? And it's a Japanese word that goes back to constant improvement, constant refinement, constant betterment, constant excellence. What are you doing if you're not trying to seek that? Get out of the way. Kaizen, constant excellence. And YoloBox is a great place to start. Thank you so much for watching. I want to remind you to catch me on the flip side. Use my Amazon and PayPal links down below. Send me a cup of coffee or a case of beer. I'd love that. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.